I'm John Joseph, and this is part two of understanding why you get addicted. Um, we discussed in the first part why you become, the changes that your mind goes through when you're going from being addicted to not being addicted. And now I'm going to explain to you some points on why you become addicted, what causes your addiction. There are a lot of different reasons. Um, I'm going to always talk to the point. In later videos, I'm going to really expand on some of these issues. But reasons that you become addicted, the number one reason is you've got an unquiet mind. The unquiet mind chemistry you will have all your life. It's what causes it, and what can you do to calm it down. The things that will affect you and make you become addicted are your outside environments and your physiological chemistry. In other words, if you're born with if you develop a psychological disorder, you're usually not born with it. It's usually, it usually develops by the time you're 7, 10 years old, 12 years old, and into your teens. But usually by the time you're 10 years old, if you have a psychological disorder, it's there. Anxieties, depression. Besides psychological disorders, your outside environment. What if, let's say you're married, and let's say you're poor, you don't make much money, and let's say you've got problems at home, you can't even feed the kids. Imagine being raised in a ghetto. Imagine that you really don't know how to break out of the situation that you're in. Your education is limited. There's never been anybody there to show you, and your mindset is not prepared to properly feed yourself or feed your kids properly. Your kids want new shoes, they like the newest phone, and you can't even buy them a phone. These are all stressors that are on your mind, and these will play into you becoming addicted. A good example I have here is there was elderly people. Now there was a guy too, and I'm gonna explain to you what he had to say about what I'm just gonna explain to you. Elderly people, there's people that are elderly. They could be 60 years old, 65, never had a problem with alcohol. We're gonna use alcohol because it's mostly alcohol. They don't get into drugs, or they could become addicted to painkillers or sleeping pills. But here's somebody that'll go all their life, and then all of a sudden, by the time they're 60 or 65, they become an alcoholic and they become a heavy drinker. There's one guy, and I don't remember his name. He's a specialist in the field of addiction, and he claims that addictive personality doesn't exist. Now, I don't call it addictive personality. What I call it is the unquiet mind. And why this guy claims that addictive personality, or unquiet mind, as I call it, doesn't exist, he says because there's elderly people that haven't been having any problems with addiction, and then all of a sudden, by the time they reach 60 or 65, they become an addict. So if there was addictive personality, why have they not become an addict? That he uses as proof. And the reason somebody will go their whole life and they won't become an addict is because they had the unquiet mind, they were borderline, but they pretty much white-knuckled their way through it. And let's say a woman that becomes an alcoholic, all of a sudden at age 60 or 65, why does that suddenly happen? You have to look at what's going on in her life. Did her husband die? Did they lose one of their pensions? Is there a lot more stress now? Does let's say the woman that became the alcoholic, did she lose a husband, and all of a sudden now she's got to take care of the house and all the responsibilities? Maybe this was something she never knew anything about, and she's very scared, very timid, and her mind now becomes more unquiet because she doesn't have the husband there to lean on. I have a customer in my business. She wasn't a drinker or anything, and she was in her just about turning 60, and her husband was a famous lawyer, and he died. And the story that her daughter told me, and I also heard it directly from her then, I almost couldn't believe it. The daughter told me, "Oh, you should see my mom now after my dad died. She's a wreck. She was taking a bottle of, I don't know if it was Cavazier or real expensive liquor, and like a brandy, and it will get you just wasted so quick." She's telling me she drank half or three quarters of a bottle. She was drinking. The mother was drinking it straight from the bottle. Now here's somebody that never had a drinking problem, rarely ever drank. Why all of a sudden is she becoming heavy on tilting the bottle? Um, it was the stress, the immediate stress. The husband wasn't there that was handling everything, but they had a lot of money. And she wound up grabbing a handle on things, and there was enough money there for her to, not have to worry the rest of her life. She got a handle on her drinking. So it's outside factors, it's physiological factors, it's dumb reasons why you can start drinking. My mother had a real bad drinking problem, and it, it destroyed her ability to function properly. And I swore I would never drink, and I knew I would never drink. And the dumb reason why I finally started drinking was, me and my brother. My brother was about a year and a half, he was a year and a half older than me. And right about that time of puberty, he was more interested in girls than I was. He found an interest in them before I did. So his interests were different than mine. We were close, but then all of a sudden he's not around me anymore. And, my brother was direction for me. I guess I have to look at it as that. And I remember one night I'm sitting on my front porch, and this partying friend of mine from the neighborhood comes by, and he just decided he was going to play on my mind a little. And I start complaining to him, my brother's not around no more. Where is he? He tells me my brother's at the parties. Oh, he's at the parties in the neighborhood, smoking the pot. He's drinking. He don't want you to see it, but he's a partier. And I'm thinking he's out getting high like the rest of these drunks in the neighborhood. And it wasn't the case. He was going to the parties. He might take a toke on a joint, one or two. That's it. Have a beer. It's over. But this guy is playing up to me that, hey, he's drinking, and why don't you do it too? Hey, everybody does it. That's when I started drinking. It was bumping into that guy. Do you see the reason why you start? It could be something innocent. You could have an association with the wrong person. You could have the wrong people in your neighborhood. There's a lot of different reasons why you start. And this is why if you've got kids, you've got to watch over your children. You've got to know who their influences are. There are so many different reasons that can cause an addiction. I remember as a kid, my aunt used to say to me, there was somebody on TV, some child actor, he was like in his late teens, and I guess he overdosed, and but he was okay. And my aunt was pointing out to me that, oh, you see such and such, there's the guy on the TV, he's no good, he's a doper. And you think in your mind, and then she would say to me, don't you ever touch that stuff. If somebody comes up to you and says you want to try it, you don't do it. I'm like, Aunt, I know better. And I did know better. But, as you age and as you have influences from other people, the mind acts in different ways. Sometimes you're emotionally gullible. You should never start. You could see a woman that's like this big. She could be 400 pounds. And, when I was a kid, you'd look at somebody like that and say, oh, look at that fat pig. It's not. It's not. I mean, I feel sorry when I see a woman or a guy, whatever, really heavy. They're an addict. If you look into their life, you'll find that maybe they're very religious. They don't smoke. They don't drink. But they have the unquiet mind. They have the addictive personality. And they need a way to calm it. And a food addiction occurs. And that's why they get so big. So it's a lot of different factors on why you become addicted. Now, if you're a hardcore addict, heroin addict, cocaine, and you've got at least 2 psychological disorders below that. When you see somebody on the street who's in really bad shape, there's 2, 3 psychological disorders behind that.